lot of things in my hands. Okay. So thank you for the invitation. I'm very enjoyed to be here. It's first time for me in Korea, so I discover a lot of things. And to follow the previous speaker, that talking about some specific techniques to develop the software, my presentation is to have more global map about software engineering. It is to define the processes of the life cycle, independently of which technique you use to develop, in fact. But it's really important to identify how you can have an efficient life cycle, efficient activities in order to produce software. I took an example of a project, in the current project, about UAV vehicle, a drone vehicle. It's a project with multiple partners, and it's really I provide some few topics about this project, about how we are organized, which technique you use to develop it. So the agenda of the presentation is first to have to focus on the certification aspect, the regulation applicable to the drone, so UAV, because it's probably a new domain. Today, we do not have a very clear standard regulation applicable to this new vehicle, but we expect that we have a massive introduction of UAV. Imagine that today one current application is for sports, which each one for ski, for cycling. Each one have a drone. They make video of its practice. So imagine now a New York marathon with 1,000 people, each one with his drone above him. So imagine what will be happen if we have no regulation, no safe control of vehicles. So this, I present the project, which is called CAP 218. 218, so you imagine what is the meaning. CAP, it's like directions, a goal. And I explained our software life cycle, which is based on the agile approach. Agile, it's something that is also well known, but not really always applicable. There is a lot of fears about the use of that. I will explain how we do that. And the problem of multi-supplement, multi-technology in the new standards for software in aerospace domain, the DO-170AC. DO-170AC include also multiple, in fact, it's not a single standard, but it is 7 standards. And 3 of these documents are what we call technology supplements. So I will explain how we do that, because our challenge also in this project is to use multiple techniques and to mix these techniques. So we have to apply all the supplements. So just a few words about drone certification aspect. So today there is discussion, current discussion, but the problem we have, it is also, we discussed yesterday about that with the other speaker. There is some big drones and small drones. On big drones, there is less discussion because it is the same operators than for the aircraft domain. You can find Dassault, we can find Airbus that are involved with that. So they used to apply aerocode standard. But with the small drones, we have multiple new operators that have no idea how to apply the aerocode standard. So there is a lot of discussion about that. So the first step is to, independently of the size, is to have a classification of the drone based on the risk used to that. So we have three today class of drone. We call open, like toys, and everybody may have it, but it is limited usage. It is something you use it in the garden. Some specific operation for delivery, and release the higher level to be able to use it in open world somewhere. It is what we call the certified. So this classification category are still under discussion. There is a specific discussion called JARUS and so on about that. The European authority are developing what they call an applicable mean of compliance to define the standard applicable. But based on that, we anticipate and we try to promote the use of aeronautical regulation, so DO-178 for software, DO-254 for hardware, and so on. So in this project, we decided to apply DO-178 at the higher level, level A, because we see it's a project today, but at the end, there will be a product to be available. So we decided to develop it at the higher level. So this project, CAP 218, the purpose is really to develop what we call a certified or certifiable autopilot for any possible drones. So the structure, so we have several partners and several work package. We here try to focus on this part. Sorry, this part is here. This part, so the definition of the sorry, something what? Thank you. Okay, so to we focus on these two work package. So the definition of the life cycle, and also all part about to apply the plan and to develop the autopilot. One in the project, we have here the French railway company, so SNCF, that are the user. One potential user is to use this drone to monitor all the railway lines and so on to see if there is some problem, some maintenance activity to be performed. Sorry. Okay. The goal we have in this project is to apply an agile software lifecycle and try to be as efficient as possible while keeping, of course, all safety aspects, and to develop a multi-supplement processes, as I said before. So, first step, agile. What is agile? Everybody have in mind something about agile and so on. Agile, at the beginning, was not for safety-related software. It is for all possible software. Okay. In our domain, we still have standards. So multiple aspects of agile process are just good sense. Just to do a minimum things to be sure that your software will be work properly. Okay. We have something that. So based on that, what are the main aspects coming from the agile approach that is really interesting, that provide an added value for us? Probably it is to have an incremental development instead to develop all the requirements independently of the technique. If you apply ArgoSim technique, like Yves Genevo just said before, it is the same. If you develop everything and after you discover that it's not, there is some inconsistency, there is some problem, some incompleteness, you have to go back to that and to redevelop everything. So here in our approach, we say we just develop few features, and then when we are happy with that, we add a new one. Okay? It's the idea of this incremental approach. Test-driven requirement. Test-driven requirement, it is instead the same. To wait to have implemented everything, then we switch to test. We discover something is wrong. We go back to the requirement. We redeveloped, we retest, and so on. It's very painful. It's very, it's imply a lot of re-engineering of the activity. So it's probably not very efficient. Efficiency, it is a problem of maturity of the requirement. You know, in our world, in software, the problem is not in the implementation. Most of the error we have today in the current software is errors coming from requirements. Because requirements are not complete, there is error in requirements, And even tests will not detect problem in requirements, because tests are here to be sure that the implementation is correct versus requirements. Okay. If the requirements is wrong, the test will take, oh, the error in the requirement is well implemented. Okay. The problem is to be sure that the requirement is correct. And one way to do that, it is very early, when you develop requirements, you also develop test cases with your favorite technique, and you assure that the requirements are verifiable and are consistent. Another main added value of the agile approach is continuous improvement. Okay. You are, for example, you develop the architecture, but it's difficult, you have some problem. Instead to develop everything, it's always nice to say, okay, we have to go back to this process to maybe enhance your standards, to enhance the way to do that, to also train people that are applied to do that. There are multiple factors that make that the process is not well implemented. Sometimes, I like to say that to be a bit provocative. As if say before, they know you are a hard worker, but somewhere, I say it's good to be a bit lazy, okay? If it's something that is very hard to do, instead to do it, ask, is it really relevant to do that? There is two problems. First, you do something that is really painful, but because you do not understand really why you have to do that. So you have a lot of chance to do it badly. Okay? Second aspect, it is really, this is not efficient. So why to do that? If it's not efficient, maybe you have to go back to your process to say, no, this activity is not relevant. So you have to define something else. It's what I call continuous improvement. So with this incremental approach, after each increment, we analyze the process we have deployed, and we identify some room for improvement. So is this incremental approach compliant with DO 170 AC? People have in mind that, oh, the standards, DO 170A, or for automotive domain, ISO 26262, or ECSS for space domain, you need to have a V cycle. This is not true. The regulation we have say, define your software lifecycle. And we define software lifecycle through the processes and activities. Software lifecycle is defined like that. This is really the DO 170 AC definition. It is an ordered collection of processes determined by an organization to be sufficient and adequate to produce a software product. The second part of the definition, it is to define this all along the time you develop and maintain the software. That's why DO 170 AC define processes, activities, and so on. So processes are planning, development processes, including requirement, design, coding, integration, verification, but configuration management, software quality assurance. You have to define how you organize all the activities all along the time you develop and maintain the software. So, yes, you can define this in order to satisfy the DO 170C objective that are to develop the data, to verify them, to manage, to perform quality assurance, to ensure that the process is well applied. So, yes, and process is just a collection of activities. So you have to define how to organize efficiently your software processes. So, okay, of course, you can organize as you want your activities. In this project, we identify our process in form of what we call a ticket. ticket is a set of activity that could be separately performed. So a ticket for us is a process. We have a ticket 1 that is a process or system improvement. The ticket type 2, it is software requirement. Type 3 is architecture, 4 component, 5 source code, 6 integration. Said it is configuration table to develop a new set of parameters. We have specific tickets that are problem report and delivery. So you say, but what is really the added value to do that? We just split in several stages the development. Not really, because if we look to what is a ticket, if I take the example of ticket type 2, that is called software requirement. Inside this ticket, we develop the software requirements, we define the usage domain of all the configuration table, we define for that requirement the hardware-software interfaces that is involved in these requirements, we develop the software test cases, but we perform also some related verification activities. We verify that the requirements satisfy the applicable guideline. We have standards for the requirements. We review the requirements to be sure that these requirements are compliant to the allocated system requirements. And we perform also the coverage analysis that we have developed all the necessary tests to demonstrate that the requirement will be correctly implemented. It is the same ticket. What is the benefit to do that? We can iterate from one activity to another activity without any constraint. I want to develop test case, the requirement is not correct. I go back to the requirements, I go back to the test. Same, I verify the requirement, I say, oh no, it's not very good. I go back to the requirements, I go back to the test cases, what is the requirement, I perform review. I can iterate very quickly, very efficiently, without any constraint, because I am inside the same process. Of course, during the implementation, the ticket can be reassigned to ensure the independence criteria. As we have level A of the 170 AC, we need to have independence between the people that develop the requirements and the people that verify the requirements. It's not an issue. In the scope of the implementation, at the time, we will reassign the ticket to be sure that the activity is performed by another people, and everything is recorded. There is no problem to do that. So we have a life cycle of the ticket. It is open to do, assign, implemented, verify, and done at the end. So we can also use the output of the ticket for other tickets. And sorry to that. Okay, just to go back here. So our life cycle is not at all a V cycle. This is our cycle. We have the initial planning process. Then we define the increment, the iteration. We select one or several tickets because the incremental approach, we can develop in parallel the requirements for the functionality 1. We can develop the code for the functionality 2 that was been already developed. So in parallel, I can have multiple tickets, multiple activities at different stages. And at the end of one of several ticket implementation, I have what we call the retrospective to close the ticket and to identify all possible process improvements. When I perform multiple iterations, now I am ready to deliver a set of functionality, maybe not the complete software. So I launched the software delivery process to also develop here. To be honest, we automatically re-execute all the tests at this step, and we identify the product. It is ready for system integration and other things. I just switched this slide. It is each in iteration planning phase, I demonstrate, we identify, because one of the main concern when we apply agile method, it is, and what about the transition criteria? What are the transition criteria? It is really defined in the 170 AC and not very well understood. The transition criteria are the minimum condition to launch a process. Okay. In other words, it is, you need to have this minimal artifact with a level of maturity to be able to use it for further development. If you have not that, that means that you will develop something badly. It's really to minimize the risk. But it's you to define this minimal condition. If you define that, I need to have everything fully verified, it will be very difficult to apply that. In industrial reason, nobody can apply that. It is really the minimal condition. You can say, I have this information, I know what I have to do, I have the tools, the inputs are identified under configuration, and based on that, I am able to launch another process, in our case, to launch another ticket. So we verify that this transition criteria as defined for one ticket, and we can select the ticket. The priorities, available resources, and need for delivery to define how to do that. We record all problem report in a specific ticket, and based on the ticket, we analyze the problem report, and we open as many tickets we need to fix the problem. Imagine I identify a problem, okay, by test, for example, or I have to go back to the requirements, so I have to go back to the design and to the code. I open all the 3 tickets to apply all the necessary changes. When all these child tickets are closed, then I can close my ticket type 8, the problem report. Okay. This is for few words. Of course, I can spend a lot of time to explain our software lifecycle, but just to highlight the main topics we have. Second part of the presentation is this multi-supplement approach. Multi-supplement, we have 3 technology supplements: model-based, formal method, and object-oriented technology. How to do that? For model-based, we would like to use the Simulink model, so to express our requirements in form of model, use Simulink, and to use a qualified code generator called QGen that is developed by a company called Adacor. So we automatically generate the code, and we do not need to verify the code because the generator, the tool is qualified. The second part is to express the requirements in form of formal model. Formal models, and to perform a formal analysis. We selected Spark, which is a subset somewhere, and both a subset and some additional feature for language called Ada. Maybe you are some of you call Ada language, which is really an efficient way, and this was initially developed for safety critical software. So there is some specific feature, strong typing, exception, and so on, to really be sure that the code is correct by design. But more than that, we can use Spark. Spark is based on contract. So you have some precondition and post-condition, and you can fully identify pre- and post-condition of your component, and you are sure, it is the formal aspect, you are sure that it is an exhaustive verification. You are sure that the code is 100% compliant with that. And the third kind is to use still textual requirements, but with an object-oriented technology approach and organization. So we have the 3 supplements for applicable to that. So to mix everything in the same software, this is an issue. What you have to apply? So here, we consider that the key is the architecture. As part of the architecture, we identify some components depending on the technology that is appropriate to the component. If, as previous speaker explained that, when we use specific technique, we have some scalability issue, we have some part that is not, formalism that is not appropriate. To use models to explain some functionality that is hardware dependent is really not really efficient. The use of formal notation sometimes is not really appropriate. You cannot really use contract for that. So we try to isolate the functionality depending how it is the most relevant technique to express this component. So one component is one method. In other way, we do not mix several techniques inside the same component. So the architecture is really important. We have this decomposition that need to be done to allow this approach. For everything that we use a model, so all the simulate is considered in the architecture as a single component, while inside the model we have further decomposition, but we still are in simulating models. So, few words about each technique. For the simulating QGen, so I say one software component. Each blocks are decomposed in sub-block as necessary. The developer identifies in each development branch when a block represents a component requirement. That is an issue in the model-based supplement. What is the requirement in the model? We have a tree, and at a level of decomposition, we consider that the granularity is enough elementary here to represent a requirement. We have Tradasta. We do not have derived requirement, so additional requirement that is not part of the software requirement. You use naming convention, and we generate ADA, source code language, based with a qualified code generator. We perform simulation, so we can early do that based on the software requirements. We review that, and we use model coverage analysis to be sure that our simulation cases are complete enough. The credit we claim by using the code generator, the qualified code generator, is on the source code verification, but also on the component test. In other words, we do not perform tests based on the model itself, but only based on the requirements from which the model is developed. For object-oriented technology, so we have here some textual requirements. If we look to the supplement, it is considered that it is an object-oriented design, so the hierarchy in class and method are part of the design. In our approach, we consider that is not relevant. To be frankly, another domain, there is not a lot of background by applying object-oriented technology in avionics software. So here we apply it, and we consider that the organization with methods and classes are probably not at the good level. It is a source code development decision and is not part on the design. So all the aspect is really based on this decomposition. One component is one ADA package. We use naming convention. Inside, to implement this component, we identify our classes and our method to implement that component. I don't know how many time I have. 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Okay. So I just give you an example about this object-oriented technology approach. In the supplement, this supplement is organized around some vulnerabilities. It is identified when you apply object-oriented technology, you may have vulnerability linked to the inheritance, used to the exception, used to memory management. And you have to deal with that and to explain in your approach how you address these vulnerabilities. A lot of these vulnerabilities are not applicable to our approach because we use ADA language. ADA language is not so permissive like if you use C++, for example. So inside of that, we have very less impact of these potential vulnerabilities. For memory management, for example, memory management, in fact, there is no dynamic allocation after initialization, so we call elaboration of our ADA packages. So this vulnerability is not applicable. For inheritance, in fact, we use inheritance, of course. We cannot use object-oriented technology without inheritance. There is no meaning of that. In fact, we have a combination of 3 approaches to address this vulnerability. First, some of them are directly addressed by the use of ADA. We cannot have multiple implementation inheritance. We cannot have class attribute overriding. We also limit the use of the source coding, the source code, by introducing some constraint in our source code guideline, source code standard. For example, no static dispatch, no deactivated code because we are sure that all overriding methods are used. And also, we cannot have multiple interface inheritance. And we also perform what we call pessimistic testing. So we verify all instances of the class with all methods. But as we reduce the number of that, it is easy to verify with pessimistic testing all methods for each instance of classes. The third method is the formal method. Formal method is based, remember, what is a formal method? It is, you have a formal method in which you perform a formal analysis. The formal method is, I use a formal model in which I implement a formal analysis. The formal model is the use of ADA contract, okay, with pre and post condition. So for each component, you have the precondition, that is the assumption you made on that. You receive this data in such range and so on, and the component will produce this data and so on. The limit of that, there is 2 limits. For all formal methods, there are 2 limits. The first is to be able to really define the contract for your component, to exhaustively define all the requirements in formal contract. And the second, it is less true from this one, but it is, you have to change the way to think when you want to express your requirement not anymore in a textual form, but in form of formal notation. With the approach, it's not so difficult. But if you imagine other formal notation like B, I don't know if you have heard about that, B that is really mathematic expression and so on, it's really difficult someone to do that. But even with Spark, we think it was a good method, but when we have the team that try to develop, we have some limitation to do that. But we isolate some few components to do that and explain the change we made with that. So we have the formal model, and we have a formal analysis that verify exhaustively that the contract are satisfied in the implementation. So in the source code. So to compare to the natural approach, we have the requirements, we have the component requirement, we develop test cases, we have the code, and we test. If we compare to the formal, the application of the formal method approach, in fact, we have the same software command. In that component, we use the formal notation, we use contract. The code is automatically proved that the contract are satisfied. And in application of the supplement, in the same, we do not have to reperform tests based on the contract. We assume that the executable object code is still compliant as far as there is some specific activity that is performed on the compiler and linker called semantic preservation between the code and the executable object code. As far as that, oh, thank you. People say 5 minutes. Okay. I didn't say at the beginning. Okay. So for the last 5 minutes, so we also alleviate the life cycle because we have not to perform a test anymore on this component. We still have tests based on software command, but not anymore for low-level testing. So it is efficient, but we had difficulty to translate directly the software command in the contract. So probably we are changing by considering we still implement the software commands allocated to a component in a textual requirement, and then we translate in the same level the contract. It is more easy for the people based on it is the first time they implement this technology to better understand, to better for a better way to really be sure that all the contract cover all the requirements allocated to that component. So we change a little our initial approach. That's exactly what I say. We have a continuous improvement based on the first component. We try to implement like that. We will discuss and we change our process, not for the future, but inside our life cycle, inside the development of that project, and for the same release. So, okay, I treat that. Okay. So how to present now that we satisfy all the objectives based on all the supplement? For some of you that are familiar with the 170AC and the supplement, we have a set on objective everywhere. So we present the compliance to supplement, so the coverage of the objective. Based on that, we have some objectives that are independently of the method. Some of them are independently. So we define our compliance coverage matrix based on 3 columns, depending of the method we use. So just to finish, example of what we do. I'm really sorry because we plan to have a first test flight by the end of the month, but it's not done, so I have no video to present for the first flight. But this is our card for the test bench, in fact. And we have 2 drones for application where we install our software, so it already run but not flight anymore. But okay, quadrimotors, quadri engines here with our side. Another one, a bit more sophisticated, and we have exactly the same software inside. We have several test UAV, if you want to say, small one, and we install the same one and a third one. Okay. At the end of this project, so last year probably, the idea is to have a product that will be available for all potential drones, because we have a way to configure, in fact, the software to be able to control a UAV with 4 engines, 6 engines, 8 engines, why not? For different maybe environmental condition, and so on. So to have further information about that, I give you the contact of a company called UNOS that will be in charge to, at the end, to promote the use of this autopilot. It's called UNOS, and it's Valentin. Hello, Valentin, because I know that we are registered, so I say, hello, Valentin. I talk about you, and you can have the contact here. Thank you very much, and maybe after the panel session, we can have few discussion about that.